Welcome. My name is Carlin Crow, and I'm with the DD Council, and I'm here with Representative Brent Siegrist for our Bill of the Week. And surprise, we're going to talk about House Study Bill 542, which is the AEA bill. And it also has now a companion bill in the House, which is Senate Study Bill 3073, if you're keeping track of numbers. And we asked Representative Siegrist to join us today because he has more inside knowledge maybe about how AEAs function, because he served for 15 years as the executive director of AEAs of Iowa. And that was in between here, 2 terms in the Iowa House, which part of your first term, right? You served as Speaker of the House.
Yes, I did.
And now he's in his, you're in your
second term since I came back after an 18-year break, yeah.
Yeah, and what good timing for us to be focusing on AEAs this session, and so early in the session too.
Yes.
So we just would like to know more about what you think about this legislative proposal by the governor, and just maybe some inside scoop too about how AEAs function, and maybe where all this came from, and how you think it's going to go.
How we think it's going to go remains to be seen, but the governor had a very major bill overhauling the AEAs, and I think that some of the considerations of what the result of that bill would be weren't fully considered. And so, to the governor's credit, she's been listening to feedback, and today actually she's supposed to add kind of a major amendment, making some changes for some of the concerns that have been heard from parents, advocates, and the AEAs themselves. So I haven't seen that new proposal yet, but I think it will be better than the original bill, and yet there's still some concerns about the bill. Basically, what the governor is proposing, as near as I can tell, is that the money that goes for special education to our school districts, and then what we call media and technology and education services, reading, literacy, math, tutoring, things like that, the money that is provided would specifically go to the school district, and then they would be able to buy services from the AEA or somebody else if they wanted to do that, which conceptually is fine. You get more choice there, but the AEAs were created to provide more parity of services. So your bigger schools get services, but so do your smaller schools. And so there's some legitimate concern about if you have the money go to some of the school districts, and let's say a big school district like Davenport says, well, I'm just going to do that myself, I'm not going to hire the AEAs to do that. Does that then result in some decreased services for more rural schools and smaller schools? And you can debate that back and forth, but that's kind of the major concern there. And the other concern is that the governor wants to bring total control over the AEAs to the Department of Education. And some people are a little bit concerned about having that centralization and adding more jobs at the Department of Education. The fact of the matter is the AEAs are currently accredited by the DE every 5 years, and so if there's something massively wrong with the AEA system, the DE could at any point when they do that accreditation process say, we don't want you to do this, we want you to do that, and that really hasn't happened. So there's 3 or 4 different parts that we have to come together on. I think we can come together on some of it, and maybe all of it by the end of by the time we vote on the bill. I think the governor will give us a little more direction today whenever she releases that, but there are still some concerns about making sure we maintain the level of services for kids and educators across the state. I think one of the things you'll see is I think you'll see a reduction in the number of AEAs. When I was executive director, we had 15 AEAs. We've merged down to 9. And I think as a result of all this conversation, we may see the AEA level drop to 6 or 5 or what have you, which will allow for a reduction in some of the administrative costs, but still provide the services. And so I think that's one thing you'll see. And then the educational services, maybe a portion of that would go to the school district to spend how they want. And I think they'll use the AEAs, but to give them a little more choice. And then we'll have the issue of the centralization of power in Des Moines at the Department of Education, which is an issue. Those are kind of 3 big issues. I'm hopeful we can work through most of them. I think the AEAs understand they need to make some changes. They do a good job. We made changes when I was there, and there are other changes can be made to make it a better run system. But we got to be careful not to destroy the system that provides the services.
Exactly. Thank you for all that insight.
Yeah.
And we know that you're talking to superintendents, and I'm sure
Mhm.
you're hearing from schools and your constituents also. Do you have any advice to give our advocates for what they should tell their legislators?
Well, I mean, particularly if you're an advocate because you have a child that is affected by services from the AEAs, I think you need to express that very strongly to make sure those services are maintained. What I found over the years that I was with the AEAs, the biggest problem we have is letting people understand exactly what the AEAs do and how good they are at it, because unless you have somebody involved, you don't really understand it. But as soon as you have a child that needs services from the AEAs, almost unanimously, they're like, wow, thank you, we need this help. I mean, that starts at birth. If you have a Down syndrome baby or whatever, I mean, one of the first calls you're going to get is from the AEA saying, how can we help? Or crisis like Perry. I mean, they do all those things. So to the advocates, I would say, tell them your story, because that is very, very powerful. It's one thing to have AEA employees saying, hey, we're great, I don't want to lose my job. That's important, but the most important thing is for an advocate to say, my child had this or this, and I got services, and we got to make sure we don't cut those services. And that's not the intent. I mean, I don't think that's the governor's intent, but something as massive as this, we got to make sure there's no unintended consequences. So we need to slow this down, take our time, and I think we can get to a resolution hopefully in the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Sounds like slowing it down is good advice.
Yes.
And all the other advice you gave too is great. So thank you for your time today. We
Happy
really
to do it,
appreciate
and I love that you're doing this, and keep your advocates and people involved. That's what runs this place. And the last thing I'd say is, we joke about this sometimes, but we get a lot of emails, hundreds. I've gotten probably 800 emails on this, but the ones that count are the ones from your area. And so when somebody reaches out from your area with a story, that has an impact. And so your advocates need to understand they can have an impact on this, and don't hesitate to do it in a very polite way, of course, but they do have an impact if they take the time.
Thank you.